No stranger to big bowl games, but those trips to Dallas are infrequent for Penn State. We bring in Tim Aiden from Black Shoe Diaries, the Penn State platform on SB Nation, to talk about the Nittany Lions and the Memphis Tigers. Couple Tigers-Lions going at it at the Cotton Bowl. Penn State's first trip there since 1975. How are we doing today, Tim?
I'm doing good, Mark. I'm still on cloud nine from the men's basketball team's big win on Tuesday night over fourth ranked and previously undefeated Maryland. So if they can beat Alabama tomorrow afternoon, there's a good chance they might be ranked next week for the first time since 1996. So, they're looking like a possibility it might make their first NCAA tournament in nearly a decade. So, but I know we're here to discuss things like the Cotton Bowl, so we'll dive right into it.
So, yeah, Penn State dives into the Cotton Bowl as one of the early bowl games on the playoff weekend, taking on the Memphis Tigers. So, Tim, I guess on one hand, the excitement of playing in another New Year's Six game under James Franklin. It's been the Fiesta Bowl and the Rose Bowl, now the Cotton Bowl, which is unfamiliar ground for the program, looking from the historic standpoint. But at the same time, maybe there's a little luster taken off the matchup with Memphis being the opponent, because you typically expect another brand name from a major conference to be the opponent. But the group of five teams have acquitted themselves extremely well in these matchups. I could go through the list for the past 5 or 6 years, but they've won most of them, actually. Your thoughts about your excitement level for this game, considering the location, the opponent, the bowl game, and the Penn State fan base?
Well, as you pointed out, it's not a bowl game Penn State fans are accustomed to going to. In fact, the last time they played in it was 1975 when they took down Baylor 41-20. So as far as general excitement from the fan base, I don't want to speak for all the fans. Personally, I find this an intriguing matchup of sorts. Obviously, Memphis, people say not the brand name that maybe other Penn State fans are hoping for, but this is a team that plays an exciting, high-scoring style of offense, and they can definitely put up some fireworks, as they've shown throughout the season, averaging 40.5 points per game. They're led by their quarterback, Brady White, who's thrown for 33 touchdowns. And DeMonte Coxey, their stud receiver, has over 1,000 yards receiving on the year. And so this is a team that's they've only played one game against the Power 5 opponents in Ole Miss. They lost 15-10 in their season opener, but this is not a team that they won 15-10. My bad. They won 15-10, and so they're not a team that's gonna back down from any sort of a challenge. And they're gonna Penn State's defense, in the secondary especially, they've had their problems with getting torched in the passing game in the past month or so. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see this game resemble a shootout. Which, if you're a general, like for me, if you're generally a fan of more scoring, I think this is a game that neutral observers will want to tune into. And the game is actually being played it's a noon kickoff on December 28th, which then leads into the two semifinal games of LSU Oklahoma and Ohio State Clemson. So if you're a college football fan, this will be a great way to, start off a long day of viewing games.
Yeah, Penn State's also going to have to chase down Kenneth Gainwell, who's one of the top backs in the nation, averaging about 150 yards per game from scrimmage, 1,000-yard rusher at 14.25, 12 touchdowns. He's got 44 out of the backfield as well. In regards to Penn State trying to counter the Memphis offensive production, there's a challenge that is pretty common this time of year in regards to coaching shakeups, changes, guys getting fired and hired, and opportunities for coordinators and assistants to move on to other jobs. And such is the case with Ricky Ronnie and the Old Dominion job. So he takes over as head coach. What is the thought process in regards to Penn State's offensive approach and how they're going to deal with that loss?
Well, for the bowl game, I mean, so philosophically, nothing between Memphis or Penn State is going to change. They're going to be running the same systems they've been running all year long. maybe there's a wrinkle or two they work on during the bowl practices. They might just throw out if a situation warrants it. But um, the only thing is you're just gonna have different play callers in the sidelines. So obviously, as mentioned, Ricky Ronnie earlier this week took the Old Dominion head coaching job, and so they have not yet named. Franklin hasn't yet named who will be the interim offensive coordinator for the bowl game. My guess is either going to be Tyler Bowen, who's the current tight ends coach, or Jared Parker, the current wide receivers coach and the passing game coordinator. So my bet would be one of those two is the interim play caller for this game. I don't expect any of the current assistants to follow Ronnie to Old Dominion. I know Ronnie's already pulled a couple of GAs from Penn State staff for either similar or like maybe a coaching position on the staff. But he's going to be mostly reaching in to other connections that are former GAs at Penn State who have since gone on to coaching positions elsewhere. So I wouldn't expect much attrition from the staff to follow Ronnie there. And on the Memphis side, Mike Norvell, the head coach, was named the head coach at Florida State last weekend, right after Memphis beat Cincinnati to clinch the Cotton Bowl. He expressed a desire to coach the team in this bowl game, but I think he quickly realized that wasn't going to happen. With Florida State trying to sign its class for next week's signing day period. And of course, just need to hit the ground running for that rebuilding project in Tallahassee. So it's Ryan Silverfield who will be the interim head coach for Memphis. And for him, it's an audition of sorts. His name's been floated around as a possibility for the full-time head coaching position at Memphis. So if they can, if they keep it competitive or, beat Penn State in the bowl game, then there's a good possibility that they may remove the interim tag from Silverfield. But like I said, as far as play calling wise, I mean, you're not going to see any changes at this point in the season.
Christmas is coming, folks. Shop Amazon. Use the link in the description section below. It helps us build the channel. It's the same exact shopping experience for you. All right, we got Penn State, we got Memphis, Cotton Bowl game. Tim Aiden on the line for Black Shoe Diaries to break it down. So as I look at this, and certainly you're right there in the midst of it as a Penn State alum, a fan, cover the team. You've got it all covered from that standpoint and hear from the fan base on a regular basis. As I see it, the 2016 season was special. Even though the bowl game was lost against USC, it was a Rose Bowl. It was special. It was a game that, even though, again, you walk away with a loss and want to win the game, of course, it was just a scintillating game that it kind of put a capper on this historic season of coming back from 2 early losses to win the Big Ten championship game. 2017, big expectations. The disappointment against Ohio State, don't quite get over the hump there, but at the same time, cap off a great season, top 10 finish, 11 wins. You win a Fiesta Bowl, first major bowl win in a span of time. And then last year, okay, we get to a point where, okay, been there, done that, top 10 team, didn't get over the hump. And then maybe how much of a disappointment was the bowl game in that it didn't really decide much, but at the same time, 9 wins and dropping back into the pack in the final rankings versus being another 10-win season, finishing in the top 10, being a favorite against Kentucky, losing that game. Like, how much does a win or a loss mean to the fan base and to you personally in this game against Memphis?
Well, I guess to answer the first about last year, it was just disappointing. Not so much. I don't think one single win or loss does it, but just the entirety of the season. So they started off 2018. They win through September. Well, I mean, I guess played Ohio State the last weekend of September, but they were 4-0 to start. Offense, looked like it was doing all right. The transition from Joe Moorhead to Ricky Ronnie was going, I guess, as smooth as you thought it could go. And then, they run into Ohio State and, they were actually moving the ball well for a good portion of that game, but they were unable to make it count where it mattered most in the scoreboard. And then, to blow a 12-point lead in to blow another double-digit fourth quarter lead for the second year in a row and lose by a point. I mean, it just seems like that kind of broke something in the team, because the rest of the year was just, I mean, the offense was very lethargic, and just, Trace McSorley's playing hurt, and the attitude of the team just seemed to be just very, it just wasn't there. Like, something just seemed really off, let's say, right after the Ohio State loss. And they go on, despite the bye week, they go on to lose inexcusably at home to a depleted Michigan State team, which of course destroyed any playoff hopes they may have harbored. And then, they slogged through wins over Indiana and Iowa before getting blasted at Michigan. And then, they win the remaining games. But then you're thinking, okay, 9-3. There was talk about they might actually sneak into a New Year's Six game, and then they find out it's Citrus Bowl against Kentucky, which wasn't exactly an inspiring game for the fan base, or it seems for the players, because they didn't exactly come out very inspired in the Citrus Bowl. And despite that, they almost came back and won in the end. But it was just a disappointing end to a disappointing season overall. And I do think that, and then you had a bunch of players in the transfer portal. In some cases, it was guys who were going to get passed up by the younger players, but you had a few guys too who maybe the team could have used at the point, like Juwan Johnson, and so it was just but it created a perception. I think it hurt from a recruiting standpoint. It seemed to create this notion that, oh well, now that Joe Moorhead and Saquon Barkley and now Trace McSorley are gone, Penn State's starting to regress again. And so I think it probably hurt as far as, I think it definitely hurt as far as getting Julian Fleming's commitment. He ended up going to Ohio State. That, I think that'll never not sting for the Penn State fan base. And then, for a period there it was a roller coaster of commitments and decommitments, and I just remember in the summertime thinking to myself, the season just needs to get here, and the team just needs to go back on the field and prove itself. Prove that 16 and 17 were not flukes. That's more the norm rather than 2018 was. And it wasn't always pretty at times, but in the end, they went 10-2, which beat most pundits' expectations. And even I myself, admittedly, on Black Shoe Diaries for our yearly season prediction, I said 9-3. So they definitely, yeah, you too, yeah.
9-3. I remember 9-3.
So yeah, most predictions I was seeing were 9-3 and an Outback Bowl bid. So, I think this was huge. This season was huge as far as, getting a third 10-win season and New Year's Six bowl bid in 4 years. And I think I may have mentioned this on the last show we did, but the last time Penn State went on a run like this was 1993 through 96. So, we're talking almost a quarter century since Penn State's had this level of consistent success.